Hi, everyone. Welcome back to The Dialogue Effect, the podcast where we talk about how real communication can shape our relationships and truly create change. I'm your host, Jackie Aguillon. Last week we talked about delivery, all about delivery. We talked about how your tone, your volume level, your presence, your confidence can completely shape the meaning of your words. And that's true in all aspects of life, right? Uh, we broke it down through two very hilarious TED Talks, and we explored how even nonsense can sound smart if it's said in the right way. But this week, we're going to be shifting gears and we're not going to be talking about how we say things, but we'll be discussing why we say things and how in dialogue it has the opportunity to create real emotional connections and strengthen relationships. I could not think of a better person for this episode and for this theme than my longtime friend, Brendan Hess. Brendan is a professional stage actor. He's been acting since childhood. He's a pre-nursing student, and then he's also a full-time caregiver for his grandfather. So, a lot of different perspectives that he has, a lot of unique perspectives that I think will really bring a valuable conversation regarding dialogue. He also is a total chatterbox, just like me. That's really why we connected so fast, and why we had such a strong relationship and a strong friendship right off the bat, is because not only is he such a great conversationalist, but he is also really good at getting other people to open up. You know, he has this natural comfortability to him, and this like laid back kind of creates this laid back atmosphere, along with being a really great yapper. So I really wanted to bring him on this episode and introduce him to you guys, because whether on stage or in real life, he knows exactly how to use dialogue. So, in this episode, we'll talk all about listening as a caregiver and also about the emotional connections that are built with dialogue, whether that be as a caregiver or just in your everyday relationships. So, let's dive in. Now, before we go to the interview with Brendan, I really wanted to talk to you guys and share some personal anecdotes about why dialogue is so important to me, involving emotional connections that are built. As I've mentioned previously, I kind of always, thought that I was this amazing communicator because, like, I can speak in a certain octave and with a certain tone, and I can look people in the eyes. And I've always told I was a good communicator, and because people think being a good communicator is like one certain thing, and that means just being a good talker to them. And I can talk. I can certainly talk. I can, don't look at my phone calls with my girlfriends because, yeah, they're hours long. However, being a good conversationalist, being a good communicator, it does not mean expecting everybody to adapt to your way of communicating. And especially when you're trying to create emotional connections with people, this intensity that I may bring, that makes me such a great, maybe public speaker, that's not always what's needed in this emotional connection building. And it's also not what makes people feel comfortable to maybe open up. And I want to use a very personal anecdote. So, my dad and I have kind of always spoken different languages. Me and my brothers have a great relationship, and we're kind of all the same. But when it comes to like us and my dad, it's just different, yeah, ways of communicating, I guess, and just kind of different ways that like we're wired. For reference, he is an engineer. He's an electrical engineer, very logical, very analytical, and I am a liberal arts communication major that does theater in her free time. So, very different worlds and very different ways that we communicate. So, growing up, I I I kind of just felt like he didn't really see me, right? Like I feel like a lot of people feel this with their dads, it's just not, or maybe one parent, it's just not this like emotional connection that you see other people have. It's just not these like great conversations that you see other people have. A lot of me and my dad's conversations would be like one-ended monologues from him, a lot of talking about himself. And I used to think that he was cold, and we just didn't, it's fine. I mean, people's communication styles and their personality styles just don't mesh sometimes. But that's hard when it's a parent, right? And I always thought that I was this great communicator and this great dialoguer, and especially these last few years, I I'm like, I want this relationship with my parents and my dad specifically, and I'm learning more about dialogue. And so I really leaned into the thought that in successful dialogue and in successful communication, to be a successful communicator, you are not just steamrolling everybody else and expecting everybody else to fit into your little block of communication. Not everybody is expressive as me. Not everybody has the volume levels that I have. Not everybody has the excitement that I have. And not everybody thinks that everything has to be said, and I think that is my dad. So I leaned into this thought a little bit, and the last few years I have realized how much our relationship has grown because I stopped trying to fit him into my box, and rather I got out of my box, and I maybe was able to sit in the silences with my dad and just kind of, I was just kind of there and just would kind of listen to him talk about his life, and that's okay. And then also what I found is that my dad is a really active guy, and that kind of that was like a quarrel, that was like a problem with us growing up, is that he would always drag all three kids on these like long hikes. We lived in Ohio, it'd be like the middle of winter, and he would take us on this family hike that everyone was supposed to be excited about. And and regardless whether we liked it or not, that was like a crow when we were kids. However, now as adults, now as into adulthood, I can kind of see how a lot of his anxiety diminishes when he's doing activities like this. And so when he visits Texas, you're darn right, we are going on walks and we are going on hikes every single day, because that's where we engage in the best type of conversation. And again, it may not be just me talking. It may not be me talking a lot. It may be him talking, but then we go on these walks and I get like the most I have ever gotten out of him. I get the most incredible dad lore. We go on these hikes, these like 4 to 5 mile hikes, and he talks about his childhood and, and like funny stories and personal anecdotes and life lessons, and just talking about it makes me want to cry, because I really realized that it's not, adapting to somebody else's personality. It is not like you're not seceding to them, you're not like losing. And I felt that for a really long time. Like, why do I have to change my personality, And it's so not that. It is, to be a successful dialoguer, to be a successful communicator, you are adapting the way that you say things and the way that you react. And it's so gratifying, because then in the end, you get this person to open up, and you get all of these amazing things and stories, and you grow your relationships. And it's not by seceding or changing your entire personality. It is simply adapting how you react to a situation. And in the end, it results in a fruitful dialogue. And it's not a bad thing, it's an amazing thing. And as soon as I kind of changed my outlook on that, um, relationships blossomed, talking about my mom too. My mom is definitely a conversationalist. She's definitely a yapper. She lives out of state too, so we're always engaging in, hour long phone calls. And however, when she's here, she's tired. She works a lot. She works really hard. And so when she visits me, she definitely does not want to hike, right? She definitely does not want to go on these like long excursions. She just wants to stay home, stay in my house with my dog and watch movies. And she just wants to do that all day with me. And that is amazing, because and I adapt the way I do. I go and I need to work out to like feel sane, but I don't expect her to come along. I don't drag her along because she's not happy doing that. She doesn't want to do that. And then, I mean, involving fruitful dialogue when we're watching our movies and we are very much the person that's talking to each other, not in the theater but in my living room. We're very much the people that are talking to each other throughout the movie, like, did you just hear what she said? Okay, wait, so why do we think that she said that? Okay, so I think and that and then mom says, oh, and then let me tell you, because this happened to me in real life a few years back, one of my girlfriends and we're able to like have this amazing dialogue and this amazing communication, and then her life lessons and her personal anecdotes and her emotional stories are able to come through with that, right? So being a successful communicator, being a successful dialoguer, again, is not just about expecting everybody to adapt to the way that you do things. If anything, it is the complete opposite. It's being able to assess the situation, assess the person, assess the emotions, assess the topic, and be able to adapt to that. Because then when you do, you're able to get the most fruitful, amazing, life changing dialogue. So, this reminded me a lot of my conversation with Brendan that I'm going to show you. As I said, he's a pre nursing major, but over the past few years, he's been a full time caregiver for his grandfather, his physically disabled grandfather. And, I really was interested in this unique perspective because imagine this emotional connection that you're able to build with somebody, especially a grandparent, where you are their sole caretaker. So let's jump into our part of the interview. Everyone, please welcome my friend, Brendan. Brendan, thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome to my podcast, which is called The Dialogue Effect. The last episode we talked about my overall theme for last episode was how you deliver things in dialogue, how it's not just about what you say, it's about how you
How
say
you
it.
say it,
Yeah,
yeah.
because that's really important in like lots of things, in many different situations.
Hmm.
So, but that is not the overall theme of today. We are moving on, and I have my amazing guest, Brendan Hess, my longtime friend, with me here today, who is a total yapper. And
Yes.
I thought that he'd be a great guest for this podcast because, not just because he's a great conversationalist, but also because you're a pre-nursing major, right?
Hmm.
You
Yes.
plan to go into that after graduation, and that very much has to do with dialogue. You also
Hmm.
are a caregiver, a full-time caregiver to your grandfather,
Yes.
Dennis, great
Yes.
man. Last but not least, you also are a professional actor. You've been acting since childhood. You've acted in multiple professional productions, and that
Hmm.
very much has to do with dialogue.
Yeah,
So
a little bit.
I have so many questions for you, but please just introduce yourself to the audience and yeah, kind of
Yeah.
just explain our relationship and why you're here.
Okay. Hi. I'm Brendan Hess. I am a pre-nursing major. I'm hoping to go to UIW, and then eventually to nursing school. I am a caregiver for my grandfather. I've been doing it for 2 or 3 years now. And I really enjoy it. It's been a lot, but it's been something that like has been so rewarding and fulfilling, and it's really showed it showed a lot of it showed me a lot of good, and I've been able to maintain like a really good relationship with my grandpa. It's just made like our relationship better.
So thank you for your
Yes.
introduction, and I would love to just
Hmm.
dive in because speaking of our friendship, we've known each other for years. We clicked right off the bat, and our conversations are always amazing. You specifically, you can talk to a brick wall. We you're so good at getting people to open up. But where do you think your love of conversation first came from? Where do you think it stemmed from?
Um, I I think just naturally, I've just been a very talkative person. I've been very easy to talk to, and then I talk to people very easily. I can start up conversation easily. Um, I've uh, you know, I think built I've cultivated myself like an air of like just friendly, just non, not no stress, not really stress, but more ease. And I think with like conversation, it was probably through acting. I think as I got older, I really liked listening to people's stories, and I really liked like hearing what they had gone through. And you hear about um how different people's lives are. You really you don't realize it until you're talking with, whoever you are.
But you talked about how you think you kind of get people to open up to you, which is you're a very easygoing guy. You are very laid back. You are very accepting and chill and that draws people in, right?
Yeah.
Talking more about life as a caregiver and then also about life as a future nurse. These are so intertwined with each other and it makes so much sense for you. You know, you just have this like natural ability to make people feel at ease and that is a lot of what being a nurse is about. I mean, it's so much anatomy and chemistry and science and everything that you're
Yes.
telling me about
A lot of prep, a lot
gets
of
to
prep, sure.
however, it is a lot of bedside manner and it's how you're making people feel. So,
Yes,
and
yes.
that involves a lot of appropriate dialogue and the appropriate delivery and making connection with others. So I'm curious with your life as a caregiver, your life as a future nurse, how do you think dialogue plays a part in that? More specifically, I guess, how do you think it's changed your relationship with people?
It's very much changed my like one, the way I talk with people, the way I listen, the way I'd always like kind of like prided myself like in being a good listener, but I think being a caregiver, it's a different kind of listening. You're in such like not unlikable conditions, but like very tough conditions. You're put in a lot of uncomfortable places where, if you go on to that, somebody comes in with like a gunshot wound. Like that's depending on where it is, that could be really serious. I remember taking care of my grandpa, and I remember talking with someone else about how I felt like I could talk to the doctors in a way that was different. Um, than like talking with like my grandfather, and it was about his treatment. And so I enjoyed that. I really liked how I felt that kind of similar switch that you mentioned with acting, where you I
Right.
think
Hope for the best, prepare for the worst.
that's it. Yeah, that's
Right,
it. Hope for the best,
right.
prepare for the worst. And I think um that that's what I've enjoyed about it. it's like the more it's like listening into more like keen details. Again, I can pick up a lot of what like how my grandpa's feeling just by how he says something. And it's vice versa on the healthcare side. When you can tell um there's like this weird like switch that goes off in my brain where I'm like I'm dealing with Dennis, but then if something's going on where like he's unresponsive or he needs serious help, then I'm like okay, like I take over essentially. Mm,
You said that um you kind of listen to the way that Dennis will say things, and that really stood out to me. That's like investigative work when it comes to dialogue, right? And we do it every day and we don't even realize it. We like listen to people, their tone and like the volume level and the speed and
body
how
language.
their body language is, and we interpret it in a very quick moment, and that's based on, and we can always, and it's always different how we interpret it, right? Because it's based
Yeah.
off of like how we grew up and how and past traumas, or what we know about the world.
Hmm.
And in caregiving, you do have to do a lot of that. You do have to do a lot of interpreting, because you're not going to get told right out what these people are feeling, right? You do have to do a
Yeah.
lot of that. So I'm interested if you can touch a little bit more about that. Like when you, Dennis, your grandfather, what you're taking care of him, and then now in the future.
I would say like it's just been like certain moments where like either like we've hit hard times or like he's just having a bad day sometimes. Where you're able to like listen, you're able to like hear the tone and like you're able to like understand like okay, like this isn't like his normal or like his base level. And I think you can kind of obviously when you're in like an emergency department, you're getting information like right then and there. Um, but I do like I really strongly believe there's something about like listening to your gut, and I think there's like I, I think like there's like a million ways to interpret something, but sometimes like we all just have like a very similar reaction to something.
And you know what's right. I love that you talked about that gut feeling. You do know what's right. Obviously, it's based off experience and knowledge and education and everything in between. But God, that gut feeling is so strong. And and sometimes it is like, rushing somebody, to the ER, or a simple listening to somebody. Maybe they just need to be listened to. Maybe they just need to, for lack of a better term, bitch about what they're feeling,
Being
and
that
talk
like
about, what this pain and this uncomfortability.
this is like kind of dark, but I think I guess it's like kind of immediately like the example that came to mind like a couple things ago, but like dying patients. Like people die in the hospital all the time, and it's never easy. And it weighs on the hospital staff. It weighs it weighs on everyone. And even if you know you're taking care of these people like 12 hours out of the day. So if you kind of one, you're supposed to build a connection to them, but if you don't, like that's kind of like why are you doing this? That's I
Right,
guess like my question is like why are you doing this?
right.
Um and so just listening to somebody like who's maybe like really dying and like really going through it, or they come in like a one-off example would be somebody comes into the hospital for pain, but then like talking with them, you realize that the pain isn't what they came in for. Like sometimes it's a secondary problem.
Right.
Um, with drug use and addicts. There's like that kind of behavior that like hospital staff has to look out for. Um, so
Just based off of your experience as an extrovert, not even as a caregiver, not even as somebody who has worked in the theater, just as somebody who is good at getting people to open up and good at making people feel comfortable and just good to be involved in a great conversation.
Uh,
To
yeah.
somebody listening who maybe feels disconnected with those traits or a little bit shyer. What do you have any advice to people struggling with that type of with communication?
You can be an artist without the medium. You can just be an artist of you can be an artist of life and just being able to have just being able to have a share a dialogue with somebody, to have a conversation with somebody. You know, uh the way you work, whatever work you do, your art isn't limited by a medium. So if you feel like if you think one day I want to be the artist of speech and I want to be like the best I want to be the best small talker ever. Like you can do it. Like look up small talking points. And then I think what you'll find in my personal experience is that what you'll find is that you have to do way less to get way more. Like nobody's expecting that much of you. And if you like, people love to talk, people really love to
Yeah.
open up and they love to like share a connection with somebody, even if it's like 5 seconds. I swear, like even if it's like a funny moment that you share with the guy at the coffee shop, like that's something that like that's something that's really beautiful. That's a really good moment. um the other thing I would say is um no one's waiting on you, man. We're waiting, like we're waiting on you. Like the world's kind of waiting on you to like take that initiative and like do and like say that thing, do that work, do whatever.
So communication is learnable, human connections are meaningful, and take the leap.
Yeah.
Sounds like phenomenal advice, Brendan. So, what does it mean to connect through dialogue? Sometimes it means adjusting our rhythm to match somebody else's. And that doesn't mean losing, that doesn't mean changing our entire personality to fit other people's wants. It means simply just letting go of control and letting go of the need to understand and simply just being okay in sitting in what might make the other person feel comfortable. Whether it's a parent who doesn't necessarily speak in abstracts or emotions, or whether it's a grandparent who might just need your presence rather than audible dialogue. Real connection comes when we stop trying to control the conversation and we start really letting what just needs to be. Good communication is not always verbal. It's not always about having the most powerful delivery. It is about the care and it's about the patience and it's about adapting to what other people may need. Thank you for being here today, everyone. If this conversation, if this episode made you think about a relationship differently, I would love to hear about it. But either way, reflect quietly and keep trying to perfect that dialogue because when we do, bridges are built. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into the Dialogue Effect. See you next time.